Here we are on our fourth session in the series on drop 2 chords. There are only the 4 inversions, so we'll have learned all of our drop 2 7 chords by this, but we're not finished with the lessons yet. There's a few more things we can talk about. As I've done with all of these, I want to give you the basic information right away for those of you who click away really quickly so that you can have something to play before you've lost interest in this. I memorized all my chords based on these shapes and how to build them. And just by repetition of building chords, I learned all the shapes. Over the years, I've realized a nice way to look at them is to keep going back to our open position chords and compare. The root on top can look like your F chord. You've got the F on top of that. One thing you guys know is how to make an F minor and maybe even an F7. To do an F7, you take this F note, lower it a fret to an E note where it's an F major 7, and you can lower that E to E flat, so it's a flat 7 in the dominant 7 chord. That's this guy here, and that could become our template. When root is on top, that means the drop 2, the note that would have come before the root in the inversion, the 7, is on the bottom. So there's the 7. 7s and 3s go together, roots and 5s. So 7 to 3, and then 5 to root. 7, 3, 5 root is our inversion for this. Let's look at those on 3 sets of strings and dismiss those of you who don't want any further explanation. Let's do it on G. So in a G chord, we could think of a G with a flat 7. Flat 7, 3, 5 root, F, B, D, and G. Taking that kind of information onto the next set of strings, we could build a chord on the D. The relationships are going to be the same, of course, but we're encountering the second string in a different position. So the root is 1 fret higher compared to the 5. So they have this stagger now, D and A. The flat 7 is the C on the bottom, in alignment with the root. And the 3, the F sharp, is sticking out here. So with the root on top, the C, the flat 7, the F, the 3, the A, the 5, we have our D7, drop 2, root on top, second set of strings. So right now we've got a D7 and a G7 above it. As you've seen, we can have a 5th chord below it. So that could be on this A note. The A and its 5 are stacked again. We're no longer encountering the second string. The flat 7 is the G and the 3 is the C sharp. So root 5, 3, 7, flat 7, or from the bottom, the way we're supposed to learn them, flat 7, 3, 5 root. You hear on the lower set of strings with the 3 and the 7 on the bottom, a little more extra tension. Whether or not you choose to use these is up to you. I don't really play these ones very much. I like the drop 2 on the low sets with roots and 5s on the bottom, which means 3s and 7s on top. And not these ones as much, so I'm not as familiar. But let's check them out. Here's your D. G on the top set of strings. These are 7s. D7. G7 again. Back to D7. A7 underneath. G7. And the D7. Here we can go again. D7, G7, D7, G7, D7, A7, G7, and the D7, A7. Notice how dark they get on the bottom and dissonant. That G7 was very obvious. There's the F and the B. And then the 5 and the root. A little too colorful for me. There may be a time or an effect where you want to use that, but in regular comping, I'm not going to use those ones. But those are your dominant 7s, roots on top. Now we'll go back and go through all of them. Here's your explanation again. When you get the root on top of your chords, that's the first inversion. A chord built in thirds would be root, 3, 5, and 7. Your first inversion kicks the root to the top. So it's 3, 5, 7, root. Then drop 2 drops that note right before your highest note, the second from the top, which is 7, down to the bottom. So it's 7, 3, 5, and root. You can memorize these in the sense that if you've got root on top, you know there's a 5 with it. So the top 2 notes are 5 and root. In the middle of the chord, the notes are in order, so it's 3, 5, and root. And 3's always go with 7, so it's 7, 3, 5, root from the bottom. Or if you know root's on top and you've dropped the 2, that means the note right before the root in the inversion's on the bottom. That's the 7. The notes in the middle are in order, 3 and 5. Or 7's always go with 3's, so 7, 3 on the bottom. Roots always go with 5's, 5 and root on the top. There are a couple of reasons I really like this inversion. Just like the 3 on top, the root is very easy to find. In the 3 on top, the root's the low note, so I can find that anywhere I want. With root on top, obviously, the root's the high note, so it's easy to identify that on the outside. Let's check out your top set of strings. We have to make a new adaptation that we haven't seen before. If we base this on an F chord, and we lower this F into this 7, the E note, we get E, A, C, and F. 7, 3, 5, and root. But listen to what's happening here. With the 7 on the bottom and the root on top, we've exposed that half step on the outsides of the chords. Most people don't want to hear that. So this is the first time we encounter the 9 in the chords. We replace the root with a 9. And that's right here. We'll do that on all of our major 7 chords. So again, if you thought of an F, you could put a G on that with your pinky. You've done that before. G, that's an F add 9 or an F add 2. Now when you go into the major 7, you get a very pretty chord. You've removed that dissonance between the 7 and the root. And you put on a nice clean 9. Having discovered it, we can put that in all our chords. We can go dominant with the 9, minor with the 9. We're not going to just yet. Let's work through what we do have. Let's move these up to another place. Let's go to this A and say, let's look at our A with our major 9. Once again, the way I see chords is I know what we need in an A chord. We need C sharps, E's, and G sharps along with the A. I have a good sense of the shape already, but my eyes will just spot all those notes. There's G sharp and C sharp, E and A, so there's my chord. Get rid of the dissonance by making it a 9. So on the top set of strings, I have G sharp, C sharp, E, and the B, an A major 9. I probably have a bass player playing the A for me. When I lower, as you saw earlier, the 7 to a flat 7, I have 5th fret, 5th fret, 6th, and 5th. I now have a G natural in my A chord. That's an A7. Lower the C sharp, the 3, to a minor 3rd. Is your A minor. You know this from this big bar chord A minor. A minor 7 without the pinky. Take that power chord off the bottom, and you've got your drop 2 root on top on the top set of strings. The 5 is on the second string. Flat the E, and you've got an E flat in your minor 7, flat 5, or half-diminished chord on A. Lower the 7 again to double flat 7. The G sharp was the 7, the G natural is the flat 7, the G flat or F sharp is the double flat 7, and once again you've come back to the exact same diminished 7 shape you've always known. 5, 4, 5, 4. No matter which drop 2 you're doing, that's the final diminished chord, whether it's root, 3, 5, or 7 on top, because it's a symmetrical chord and all the distances are the same. So that's root on top on the first set of strings. Let's do root on top for the second set of strings, the E chord. So we get E, B, G sharp, and D sharp. Again, I do that without actually thinking about a shape. I just see where the notes are. E and B, sharp, and D sharp. At the moment of building it, I don't even know which is the 3 and which is the 7 necessarily. I can't tell you without practice that this is 7, 3, 5 and root. I just know the notes I need and I know what they look like on the guitar. Once again though, we don't want that exposed minor 2, the major 7 on bottom and the root on top. So we raise the root to a 9. Our bass player would be on an E. And there's a beautiful E major 7 with the 9, so E major 9. We don't need the 9 in here when we do the other qualities, although we'll explore those more next time. So here's your E, B, G sharp, and D sharp. Lower the D sharp to a D natural, and you have your E7 again. E, B, G sharp, and D. Flat 7 on the bottom. Flat the 3 now, the G sharp becomes a G, and you have your minor chord. From the bottom, flat 7, flat 3, 5, and root. Lower your 5, minor 7, flat 5. The B is now flat. Minor 7, flat 5 is also half diminished. Now let's fully diminish it by dropping that 7 again to a double flat 7. And once again, you've got the exact same shape that you always run into when you do drop 2s. Every note is flat and the 7 is double flat. So those are very useful. The lower set of strings I don't find particularly useful in any of these, but let's do them anyway. First, let's do C since we're in this position. C, its 5 is G, its 3 is E, and its 7 is B. Way too much for me, the B and the C, that minor 9 or minor 2 exposed. So we can raise the C to a D. This chord sounds really quite pretty, but it probably doesn't sound like a C to you. It's hard for us to hear the C root in that with this 9 on top. We're probably hearing something else, an E or a B chord of some sort. So when I flat the 7, the B becomes flat on bottom. I'll get rid of the 9 and go back to C. So I got B flat in E, G and C. Flat 7, 3, 5 and root in C. That's this guy here, the dominant 7. Now I'll lower the 3, the E into E flat. There's minor 7. Again, I think that sounds quite pretty. I'm not certain I'm hearing a C minor in that though. Now we flat our 5, the G note. So we get C, G flat, E flat, and B flat. C minor 7, flat 5, or C half diminished. And then lower the 7 again into our diminished. So it's a diminished 7 in a diminished 7 chord. And there we have our diminished shape that we've known in every other inversion. We've seen that our drop 2s are made of a 5th or a 4th separated by a 3rd usually. So 3 on top, for instance, would be a power chord, a 5th on the bottom, root 5. 7 to 3 on top is a 4th. They're stacked, so get power chord shape. A major 3rd separates them, and a stacked 4th on top. When we had the 7 on top, we have 3 to 7 on top, which is a perfect 5th, and that looks like a power chord. Underneath that, 5 to root is a 4th, so we get 2 stacked notes, the 4th from the 5 to 1, the major 3rd to the next set, and the perfect 5th on top. So we only have 1 finger sticking out there. In the 3 on top, we had 1 finger back. The hardest one to finger is the 5 on top. We get a root 5 on top and a 3-7 on the bottom. They're both perfect 5ths. It's pretty hard to get some of those grips. They're so wide, 5th and 5th, separated by only a 2nd. With the root on top, it's probably the easiest because we have 2 sets of stacked 4s. We have the 7 to the 3 on the bottom, that's a 4th. And the the 5 to the root on top. Also a fourth. So we get this 4 and 4 separated by a minor third. As we adjust them, we draw them into line. The 7 and 3 could be flatted. They're fourth as they're flat, and the 5 and root are fourth, so they're all stacked up. That's what makes this one so compact and so easy to play in most situations. So now you know all the 7 qualities of a drop 2s. Major 7, dominant 7, minor 7, half-diminished 7, and fully diminished 7. You know them with all the inversions, root, 3, 5, or 7 on top, on 3 different sets of strings. Next we can work on our memory work for them a little bit, and we can also add the 9s. But that'll do it for now, guys. Take her easy. Bye for now.